My name is Jack Smith. I'm a 30-year-old single guy running a small company right now. Until 3 years ago, I worked at an IT company. However, after working there for 5 years, I started feeling increasingly out of sync with the way my colleagues worked and thought, which caused me a lot of stress. At that time, the CEO of one of our former clients, Mr. Anderson, suggested that I try going independent. I followed his advice and, as a result, I managed to keep a small business running, although it's always been robbing Peter to pay Paul. Running my own business brought about numerous challenges, and my financial situation never improved. However, this was largely due to the recent economic recession. The employees I hired, valuing their personality and skills, were all good people and competent at their jobs, so there were no issues in terms of capability. But despite this, my business remained unstable. There was one saving grace for me, though. It was that Mr. Anderson, the CEO, who had been concerned about me since my time at the previous company, was there for me. Mr. Anderson's company was so well known in the industry that there was probably no one who didn't know his name. Having the environment where I could consult with him was a huge mental support for me. Today, again, Mr. Anderson came to check on my company while running some errands. I have come to trust him quite a bit and was consulting him about how my business, despite being established, was not taking off at all. Mr. Anderson, with a serious look, responded, "Given this recession, it's only natural that client requests would decrease. We need to think about how to fight from here on. Still, I believe it's no accident that you're the CEO, Jack. You have something that attracts people and makes them want to follow you. So, it may be tough now, but I hope you never give up." Then he placed his hand on his chin and pondered deeply for a while. I wondered if he was thinking of some good idea. As I waited in anticipation, my heart pounding, Mr. Anderson suddenly said with a somewhat pleased expression, "Oh, by the way, Jack, would you be interested in meeting my daughter?" "What?" I blurted out in surprise at the unexpected proposal. However, not paying much attention to my panicked state, Mr. Anderson continued with a smile. "My daughter is a bit too kind, but she's a very good-hearted girl, and I think you two would make a great family. Maybe it's a parent's bias, but I guarantee her good nature and her ability to handle housework and work. If you had a girlfriend, I wouldn't suggest this, but when I asked you before, you said you wished you had one, didn't you?" Now that he mentioned it, I might have said something like that. I deeply regretted having answered honestly then. "Well, haha. Now that you mention it, I might have said something like that." I gave her a smile and desperately tried to think of a way to decline this match which I wasn't too keen on. As I was racking my brain for a good excuse, Mr. Anderson pressed on. "What do you think? If you don't think you're a good match, you can, of course, decline. But at least meet her. Think of it as a new experience." It wasn't that I was against the idea of a match with Mr. Anderson's daughter, but rather, I didn't see much point in finding a girlfriend at this stage, so I vaguely wanted to decline. "Yeah, but I'm just not in the mood for a relationship right now. I'm sorry, but could you please find someone else who might be a better fit?" However, Mr. Anderson wasn't willing to give up. "No, that won't do." "What do you mean it won't do?" "Oh, I know. How about this? You don't have to think of it as a date. Just get to know each other as friends. Maybe have a meal together. No pressure. Please. My daughter insists that you're the one she wants to meet out of all the candidates we have." Well, I did praise you in front of her quite a bit, so it's no wonder. My daughter, Emma, is a good girl. I don't think she'll make you uncomfortable. Just once, for her sake, could you talk to her? Mr. Anderson had been a great help to me even when I quit my job at 27 to start my own business. With Mr. Anderson pleading so earnestly, I couldn't possibly refuse. "All right. So, when is this going to happen?" "Oh, thank you. As for when it works for my daughter, either the 5th or the 12th. After hearing several dates that worked for Emma from Mr. Anderson, I got Emma's contact information and we called it a day. Mr. Anderson seemed very eager to move things along. He left the office with such a spring in his step that it looked like he might start skipping. Why is this happening? At some point, without me noticing, an envelope had been placed discreetly on my desk. Inside were several photos of Emma. When did Mr. Anderson Well, I was overwhelmed by the sudden matchmaking and Mr. Anderson's fervor. He had left a parting gift. Though I held my head in my hands, I couldn't help but feel a bit curious as I picked up the envelope and took out the photos. The woman smiling in the photos was cute, with a kind-looking demeanor. But for someone like me, who had no interest in dating, no matter how pretty or my type she was, the only feeling I had was this is a hassle. So I had intended to refuse. But with Mr. Anderson asking, there was no way I could turn him down. Mr. Anderson was, in a sense, a mentor to me in my professional life. Even though he said I could refuse, he'd probably be a little disappointed if I did. If I said I didn't want to meet the daughter he praised so highly, wouldn't he feel hurt? I had a lot of worries, but the promise had already been made. Thanks to Mr. Anderson's passionate persuasion, I ended up facing my first ever matchmaking meeting. As spring was coming to an end and the days were getting sunnier, I found myself heading to the matchmaking venue in a nice suit with neatly styled hair. The place Mr. Anderson chose for the meeting was one of his favorite nice restaurants. It looked extremely expensive restaurant. Having only been to hotel buffets occasionally, I was overwhelmed by the starkly different atmosphere, which made me even more nervous. I was feeling lost, not knowing where to go or who to talk to, when a person who looked like a waiter approached me. "Are you one of our reserved guests for today?" Yes, I should have a reservation under the name Anderson. As soon as I mentioned Mr. Anderson's name, the waiter immediately recognized it and led me to a seat in the back. There, seated side by side, were the CEO in an impressive, expensive-looking suit, and a young lady who looked a bit different from her photo. Seeing Mr. Anderson's face, I felt a little relieved. "Hey, James, thanks for coming today. Please, have a seat over there." Yes. I felt a pressure from the restaurant's atmosphere and Mr. Anderson's appearance, almost forgetting how to move my body. Mr. Anderson laughed and said, "You seem really nervous." Yes. I could only answer pathetically. When I finally managed to sit down, Mr. Anderson spoke in a gentle voice. "James, you don't need to be so formal. Just relax and enjoy the good food." However, I couldn't relax at all. Yes. I was meeting Mr. Anderson's real daughter, my benefactor, and I had to talk in front of Mr. Anderson. To make things worse, Mr. Anderson's company was a major, well-known corporation in the industry, and I was sweating like crazy. It's impossible not to be nervous meeting the daughter of such a big company's CEO. Even though I felt discouraged, I thought it would be rude to stay stiff like this, so I tried to focus on the person in front of me. I kept muttering in my head, "Don't freeze up. This isn't the time to be nervous. Think about the other person. Be interested in them. All right. Even though I'm usually seen as unreliable, I'll do my best not to trouble her here." I tensed my shoulders, back, stomach, and legs in sequence, trying to pump myself up. Mr. Anderson himself had only a high school education, but he quickly grew by learning skills on the job and started his own company, making it this big. Because of that, his skills and personality were highly regarded even among our business partners, and many people wanted to gain his favor. I don't know why Mr. Anderson took a liking to me. One day, when I was struggling with work, I casually consulted Mr. Anderson, and he said, "If you're that troubled, maybe it's time for you to go independent. You might not be someone who fits working under an organization. I think you're suited for starting your own business, James." That conversation made me consider creating my own workplace for the first time. Seeing me frozen stiff, Mr. Anderson gave a slightly troubled smile and said, "Oh, Emma, this is the talented young CEO I told you about, who went independent from D Corporation. Go ahead, introduce yourself." Startled, I turned to her and said, My name is James Smith. Thank you for coming today. My father has told me a lot about your impressive work and how trustworthy you are. Nice to meet you. I'm Emma Anderson. I look forward to working with you today." While it was flattering to hear that Mr. Anderson praised me, I couldn't help but worry that her impression of me might be too high. But I quickly shook off that thought and replied, "Yes, nice to meet you too." At that moment, I noticed that Emma seemed a bit shy and gave a meaningful glance, almost as if she was embarrassed to meet someone she hadn't seen in a long time. But I didn't remember having any classmates or acquaintances among the daughters of company CEOs. Is it just my imagination? Have I met this person somewhere before? Emma's gaze felt so far from what one would direct at someone they are meeting for the first time that I couldn't help but wonder. As I stared at her curiously, Emma's expression became even more embarrassed. She averted her eyes from me for a moment, blushing shyly, but a few seconds later, she turned towards me with a determined look and asked, did you feel like you've seen me somewhere before? I thought, is there really something to this? But I couldn't recall anything about her. As the silence dragged on due to my apologies and desperate attempts to remember, Emma looked at me with an entranced expression and said, I've never forgotten about you, Jack. I've been searching for you for these past 16 years. What? I was shocked that someone would have such strong feelings for me, yet I had no memory of her. It's not surprising. You probably had a mild case of amnesia at some point. Emma then made another shocking confession. Mr. Anderson was smiling broadly. Well, you see, when I first met you again, I just thought it was a coincidence that someone had the same name. But as I got to know you, I started thinking that maybe you were the same Jack who helped my daughter back then. But even though you lived in the same area, you said you didn't remember anything from that time. I was curious if such a coincidence was possible, so I kept thinking about you. That's why I insisted on meeting here today to talk about it. I'm sorry. What happened 16 years ago? Indeed, there is a period around when I was 18 where I lost some memory due to a certain reason. It was very limited, only affecting a small range of memories that didn't impact my studies or relationships at the time, so I didn't worry much about it. To think I met Emma or any others during that period, I felt bad and said, I'm really sorry for forgetting something so important. Emma replied, it's okay. When I went back to our hometown, C-Town, to see you again, your parents told me the situation. I was still very young and went into a panic when I heard, so I ran away. It's understandable that you don't remember. I'm 30 now, and Emma is 26, so 16 years ago, I was 14 and she was 10. What happened between us back then? Emma began to explain slowly. She used to be weak and often missed gym classes. Even though her tests showed nothing wrong, she would sometimes feel dizzy and had to rest in the nurse's office. Some boys would accuse her of pretending to be sick to skip class. They'd call her a cheater and a slacker, but she was too timid to talk back. The constant bullying was becoming unbearable for her. Hey, you guys, how can you be so cruel to a girl who's not well? Can't you see she's struggling? There are people weaker than you. Don't take your health for granted and stop imposing your standards on others. Apparently, as a middle schooler, I stood up for Emma. My dad had always taught me to be kind to women, especially regarding their health, and to protect anyone being mistreated. Maybe it was because my mom wasn't very strong and would often be exhausted just from daily chores. I could somewhat understand Emma's pain. That's why I instinctively defended her. When I stepped out, a middle schooler who looked big and strong appeared. The boys then said, TCH, it's unfair to use a big guy. Remember this, and tried to run away. However, hey, you guys don't seem to get it. From now on, this girl and I are acquaintances. She's gonna report to me every day about what happens. If I find out that you're pulling this kind of crap again, you won't get away with it. I'll let your parents and the school know, and they'll take proper action. After I glared at them, they turned pale and ran away. Back then, I was the tallest in my grade, and maybe because I was on the baseball team, I seemed pretty intimidating to them. After that, the bullying towards Emma almost stopped. Even if they tried to say something mean, Emma had learned to control them by saying they could use my name, so they didn't say anything as harsh as before. Considering how stressful it must have been for young Emma to be the target of those cowardly boys who picked on the weak just to blow off steam, especially when she was feeling unwell, it must have been incredibly painful. I felt relieved that I could help her out even a little bit. When you're not feeling well, unless you have visible symptoms, the strong ones treat you like you're faking it. When you become an adult, it turns into accusations of poor self-management, lack of responsibility, or even lack of guts, causing you to be criticized for inconveniencing others. However, healthy people think this is normal. Especially at work, there's a strong tendency to see people who often get sick as a nuisance. Therefore, the majority opinion is considered correct, and the opinions of the weak are dismissed as whining. Our society hasn't developed enough for them to raise their voices against this injustice. Ideally, this shouldn't happen, but those who can't keep up with the general standards are seen as a nuisance and not even understood. Because of this, there are people in the gray zone who have no choice but to quit their jobs, which is the reality of today's society. Everyone has to be able to do the same thing in the same way. Because of this kind of education, people like Emma have to go through such experiences. There are even some school nurses who won't let kids lie down in the infirmary just because they don't have a fever. That's why, even after I stopped protecting her and she became a middle schooler, Emma still struggled with the lack of understanding around her when she wasn't feeling well. However, Emma had changed a little by then. After that, until I moved away, Emma and I would talk freely about our thoughts every day after school. We seemed to have developed that kind of relationship. And when we talked about our dreams for the future, I said, my dream is to work hard using a computer, earn a high income, and make my wife happy. Also, not just about the money, but I want to create a warm and loving family. My home wasn't a place where we talked much with our parents. There was a time when I struggled because I had no idea how to have conversations with people. Well, to be honest, I still struggle with that. That's why I want to build a family where we can talk openly with each other. It's kind of embarrassing to say this to my classmates, though. Emma seemed to have remembered this for a long time. Thanks to me, Emma gained the courage to face her teacher even when suspected of faking illness. Every time she was doubted, she'd rush to the doctor to get her diagnosis and explain her condition in detail based on what the doctor told her. When she couldn't take a break without a fever or when classmates talked behind her back, she used the same strategy, explaining her condition thoroughly until they understood. And what is even harder, she made it clear that she wasn't faking to skip class, and most people eventually quieted down. At first, Emma thought the bullies listened because a big guy like me spoke up for her. But she realized that if she kept relying on others, she'd always be a target. So, she decided to change. She recognized that being passive made her an easy mark and resolved to stand up for herself. Though she'd always known this deep down, she'd been too scared of backlash to speak her mind. You have to change that part to get the other person's understanding. Besides, if you realize that you're still being looked down upon as someone who won't talk back even when treated poorly, Emma said she found the courage to face it alone because she realized there are people with heart who will support her unconditionally. And when I said I wanted to create a warm family, even though it was just a childish promise, Emma asked, well, if you still don't have a girlfriend when you're older, can I be a candidate for your wife? I replied, well, I can't really think about that now since I am in middle school and you're in elementary school, but I'll think about it when we grow up. It seems she remembered that all this time. I transferred to another school when I was about to start my third year of middle school, and that was the end of it with her. Before I transferred, Emma had begged me to tell her where I was moving, and it seems I did. After I lost my memory, it looks like Emma came to visit me at my new place. But before she could see me, my mom told her about my memory loss, and she got so upset that she left without meeting me. My mom didn't know anything about Emma, so she didn't say anything to me. I don't know why I lost just that part of my memory because of transferring schools, but I felt terrible for forgetting about a girl who cared so much about me. I said that to you, Emma, and that we used to be close, but I forgot everything. I'm really sorry. When I apologized again, Emma slowly shook her head. No, Jack, it's not your fault you have amnesia. Besides, the important memories are still in my heart, and that's enough for me. Saying that, Emma gave me a gentle smile. And even if you don't remember me, I think it would be great if we could start getting to know each other again and deepen our relationship. My dad keeps worrying because I'm at that age and keeps pushing these arranged meetings on me. But I just want to go back to the way things were when we could talk as friends and I could call you brother. I don't care about marriage or dating. So, let's make today a day to learn more about each other since it's our first meeting. And, if it's okay with you, I'd love it if we could go out together sometimes. When I said that, Emma looked at me with a cute, shy upward glance. It seems she has completely forgotten about it. Even when I heard Emma's story, I couldn't remember saying such a thing in the past. But I definitely felt a strange sense of comfort or security with her, even though we were supposed to be meeting for the first time. and I thought that was probably because of both Mr. Anderson's boasting about Emma's good nature and the days when Emma and I shared our honest thoughts with each other. The old memories had completely disappeared from my mind, but when I was talking with Emma, I felt more relaxed than with any other woman before, and there was this peculiar sense of security that made me not feel awkward even if the conversation paused for a bit. Yes, it was like looking at the moonlight on a quiet night. It was like watching the dawn sky turning red and orange, feeling all my worries just wash away. She had a calm presence, contrary to her gentle face and demeanor. She was someone who made me feel at ease, like listening to the sound of rain in total darkness. It might also be because she has a knack for bringing up topics at the right moment and her perfect way of nodding along. Even I found myself wanting to meet her again as soon as we finished talking. Even if my memories were gone, I was sure that my past self also felt comfortable spending time with her. To me, it felt almost like destiny that I could feel such a good connection with Emma, who was a stranger to me. But I don't know if that feeling is romantic. I think as we spend more time together, my feelings toward her will gradually become clearer. When I was younger, I only got excited about girls who were my type. From there, if I found out they had a good personality, it would develop into a crush, and even though I worked up the courage to confess, I sometimes got rejected. On the other hand, if a girl wasn't my type, I didn't even bother to get to know her personality, and she wouldn't become a romantic interest. But Emma is different. I instinctively knew right away that she was a good person. I don't know what this is. Even if it doesn't turn into a romantic feeling, I think it would be great if we could get along as dinner friends or hangout buddies. That's how comfortable it was to spend time with her. She was so easy to talk to that I thought she might already have someone she liked. Seeing how calm and relaxed I was talking to Emma, Mr. Anderson smiled kindly. Regardless of what happens with Emma, if I could become family with someone like Mr. Anderson, I might always feel very warm and cared for. Mr. Anderson has always cared about me like a relative. Whenever I consulted him about work, he would always listen earnestly and give me advice. The meeting, in a good way, didn't feel like a formal meeting, and it ended in a relaxed and pleasant atmosphere. I exchanged words with Emma about meeting again and then parted ways that day. Since that day, Emma and I have become friends who occasionally go to places we want to visit or various places like nearby shopping malls. So far, there's been no talk of dating, let alone marriage, but I wonder what Emma thinks. After maintaining a friendship for about a year, I thought if Emma was waiting for me to develop those feelings. Since I still don't know when or if I could have romantic feelings, I was planning to gently suggest that she look for someone else. I thought it might be cruel to say this to someone who confessed to me when we were young, but I felt it would be wrong to keep taking up her time without saying anything. However, contrary to my expectations, Emma's response was surprising. Back then, I said those things because I had a crush on my idolized big brother. But now, I don't really feel like dating or doing couple-like things. So, you don't have to worry about me. I actually enjoy casually wandering around the neighborhood like this. Let's keep things as they are for a while, and if you find someone you like again, Jack, you should go ahead and fall in love then. Please don't worry about me. I carefully conveyed my feelings, but Emma casually responded like that. Huh? Really? Old memories had already become completely good ones for her. It seems Emma just wanted to thank me once more, and that's why she joined the meeting. Having expressed her gratitude, Emma hoped she could again become close to someone she could talk to and feel at ease with, like we did every day after school back then. That's all she was thinking. The world is full of talk about love, marriage, and childbirth, but not everyone is like that. A man and a woman can go out together, and it doesn't have to be a date. Love isn't everything in life. It's not the only source of great joy in life either. Whenever people asked, "Why aren't you getting married?" I couldn't find any reason why I had to. Other than the decrease in the younger population, I couldn't find any other disadvantages. Meeting Emma again made me feel that it was okay to live the way I wanted, and I felt a sense of relief. It seems I helped Emma in the past, but now, I feel a bit freed from the societal pressure of what is considered normal. The unconscious indoctrination of must be this way was lifted. I felt like a black weight on my shoulders and back had been removed. At the zoo, I quietly whispered thanks from behind to Emma, who who was happily watching the Monkey Mountain. She brightly responded, "Huh, for what?" And I felt more strongly than ever, after 2 years of friendship, how important she is to me. I hope we can continue to have this kind of relationship. I realized that there are different kinds of happiness, and it made me feel truly happy. After that, work started to go a bit smoother, and the business situation improved compared to before. I wonder if there's a connection between my mental state and the state of my work. Of course, it could also be largely due to the fact that my employees are capable. Through the matchmaking Mr. Anderson arranged, I realized once again how fortunate I am to have good people around me. What is happiness to me? Maybe it's just because I'm young that I can say I'm not interested in marriage. It's not that I haven't thought about it. Maybe my perspective will change in the future. But even if I had chosen a different path that seemed better, it would have come with its own challenges. So, unless it's something really bad, I decided not to think that the choices I've made are mistakes. I have plenty of regrets from the past. I've lost a lot of things I wanted to do and people who were important to me because of them. But I want to live thinking that the decisions I made at that time were the best I could make for myself back then.